when I hear thematic ETFs, I think something very narrow and almost pointless. What am I missing here?
Well,
wow, that's quite a judgment.
I mean,
it's a no judgment zone.
Well, thematics, they range from robotics to self-driving cars to cannabis.
Else?
So,
Cannabis.
there's a lot of options.
But
there
why not
for
just buy the
investors.
individual stocks? What was the main selling point with these thematic ETFs?
Well, thematic ETFs. I mean, we'll go back to. They had a meteoric rise since 2016. Mm-hmm. But in 2019, we really saw those assets stall, like you said, at $51 billion. And that, that's also had the lowest inflows since 2016. And like I said, it's pretty surprising also that the fact that the overall industry has crossed a major milestone of $4 trillion in assets.
Okay, that's a lot.
Well, there's sort of a more fundamental question here, which is a lot of ETFs have gained popularity because they are passive and they charge low fees. So are these funds basically outside of that particular selling point because they probably charge slightly higher fees and don't necessarily get that sort of broad exposure?
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons probably that they haven't performed so well this year, because obviously the S&P 500, we've had this record rally. And so why would investors go towards niche funds when they can track the broader market? The S&P 500 returning 29% to investors in 2019. So why go for those costlier funds?
Okay, so I mean, looking forward to the rest of this year here, then with everyone sort of expecting the broader market to obviously not do 29% like it did last year, does this mean that some of these more thematic funds, these narrower funds, and the fund managers there are going to have a little bit more of a easier go at it?
Well, I think that's what a lot of analysts are expecting. If we get modest gains from the S&P 500, then it will entice investors back to thematic funds potentially, like Todd Rosenbluth of CFRA Research was saying that he thinks that 2019 was just a blip, and that in 2020, some of those thematic funds will outperform.
How much are these funds being created because of demand from investors, and how much is it being created as a way to distinguish oneself as a fund manager in order to attract investors? I mean, do you have a sense of that? That's always been my question when I see new fund offerings. It's like, who is this? Was this created by investor demand or by fund manager demand? Do we have a sense?
I think, it's probably a little bit of both. It's a very interesting question, so.
You're like, no, I have no idea.
Do you remember, though, the Global X Thematic ETF? This was the ETF that essentially
this.
combined all the thematic funds under one umbrella, so you can buy basically a basket of thematic funds. And I'm not sure how they performed, but I mean, it was an interesting concept. And they kind of made this sort of argument that people, they wanted the thematicness, but they wanted it sort of segmented off. Right, exactly.
Right. I mean, honestly, though, in fairness, and not to just dismiss them out of whole school, because honestly, there is an important role for people wanting to get access to an entire industry and being able to get in through an easy vehicle like an ETF. I think that there just sort of is a little bit less enthusiasm as the S&P rallies to such a degree.